Having one of the world's most powerful passports, British citizens can enter over 100 countries without a visa, a testament to the strength and global reach of the UK passport. This privilege allows for easy travel and exploration, which is undoubtedly impressive. However, this freedom also comes with risks. Occasionally, British tourists encounter situations abroad that are not only unexpected, but tragically fatal. Join us as we explore the stories of 5 British tourists who tragically lost their lives in foreign lands, highlighting the unforeseen dangers that can arise even during leisurely travels. Kyle Barrow, a 27-year-old man from Oldham, Manchester, UK, had always harbored a deep desire to travel abroad. Despite his active lifestyle and love for hanging out with friends, he had spent most of his life within his home country and had yet to explore the wonders beyond its borders. So when the chance to travel overseas with his longtime buddy Cal popped up, Barrow couldn't contain his excitement, even though it was a last-minute decision. This was the perfect opportunity to check off items from his bucket list and have a blast while doing it with his friend of 10 years. Their destination? Turkey. They were still determining why they settled on that particular spot. However, from what reports say, one thing was evident. They had some grand plans for their trip, with jet skiing and parasailing ranking high on their agenda list. On June 6, 2023, the duo arrived in the country and headed straight for Manavgat. The next day, they hired mopeds to tour the town and visit tourist spots. However, this act was the costliest mistake Barrow would ever make in his short life. He reportedly had never ridden a moped before, meaning that Barrow had no experience that would have helped him properly navigate the busy streets of Manavgat. He also did not wear a helmet, a necessary safety recommendation when driving such a vehicle. So, unfortunately for Barrow and his pal, all of these didn't matter to them when they began the tour on the rented moped. Cal rode in front while Barron followed closely. At some point, Cal looked into his rear mirror and saw Barrow laughing, a sign that his buddy was enjoying himself. But the next time Cal looked behind him, Barrow was nowhere in sight. Immediately, he returned down the road they had followed to look for Barrow, where he discovered that the unimaginable had happened. There, Cal found Barrow lying in a pool of blood in a way that showed that he had collided with something. Shocked by the scene, Cal grabbed Barrow while screaming, even with cars passing him. He would later claim during an inquest that his friend was still conscious at the time, and that there was a lorry that had stopped nearby, which he speculated could have been the vehicle in which Barrow collided with it. Following the mysterious accident, an ambulance arrived at the scene but drove off without helping Barrow, after one crew member took only a mere glance at him. According to reports, Cal had to wait another 15 minutes before another ambulance arrived and rushed Barrow to the nearest hospital. The doctors began working on Barrow to stabilize his condition at the hospital. Meanwhile, Cal, who was also in the hospital waiting for his friend, contacted Barrow's family to inform them of the situation. In the end, all the medical efforts were in vain, as Barrow succumbed to his injuries not long after. A post-mortem, which was undertaken by a pathologist named Dr. Emil Salmo, revealed evidence of more than one injury, including a fractured spine. Dr. Salmo also believes that the cause of Barrow's death was due to multiple injuries. During the investigation into Barrow's death, the local police claimed that Barrow sustained the injuries after driving into a palm tree. However, Cal refuted the report during the inquest, saying that the likelihood of it happening looked impossible to him. In the end, it was stated that Barrow died in a road traffic collision, with the exact circumstances of the incident being unknown. His body was later transported back home for his funeral, although his friends, a girlfriend named Hannah, and his family had to crowdfund for him to pay the cost of flying him home and also to pay for his funeral. Meanwhile, tributes poured in honor of Barrow following his death. Friends described him as a legend, one in a million, the spine of every group, and the man that brought us all together. Some even commemorated their dear friend with tattoos, ensuring that his memory lives on. In the last decade alone, Koh Tao Island in Thailand has been shrouded in darkness, marked by the deaths or disappearances of at least 11 tourists under mysterious circumstances. After multiple such cases, the tropical holiday spot was nicknamed Death Island, or even worse, Murder Island. Despite this sinister reputation, 31-year-old Theo Bailey and his longtime girlfriend Chantal Zeri ventured to the island for a vacation in March 2024, seemingly unaware of the grim fate that had claimed the lives of numerous travelers before them, and would also claim one of theirs. During one of their outings, the couple was pictured laughing while drinking from buckets of alcohol at a local bar. They were with other people on vacation, some of whom were breathing in nitrous oxide, known as hippie crack, and others were dancing provocatively as the evening went on. All in all, it was a night of trance for all of them. Shockingly, Bailey vanished without a trace at some point during the gathering. The exact moment of his disappearance is unclear, and whether he informed anyone of his whereabouts is uncertain. All that is known is that as the party wound down, Bailey was nowhere to be found. The following afternoon, after a search for him, Bailey was eventually found. However, it wasn't a joyful reunion. Instead, his lifeless body was discovered lying in a shallow drainage ditch outside the Rocktopus Diving Center near Sayre Beach. Reports indicate that Bailey had been lying dead in that location for several hours before his discovery. This suggested that his death likely occurred while the party from the previous night was still ongoing. Additionally, his phone was nowhere to be found, either taken by someone or lost during the incident. An investigation was promptly initiated by officers from the Koh Tao police station after they were informed of the incident. First, they cordoned off the area where Bailey's body was found to allow thorough examination by the forensic unit and members of the investigation team, and to prevent the contamination of any potential evidence. Then Bailey's body was recovered and transferred to the forensic department at Surat Thani Hospital for a detailed examination. As of now, the findings of his autopsy report have not been made public. As the investigation continues, Lieutenant Colonel Chokchai Suthimek, superintendent of the Koh Tao police station, made a startling statement during a press interview. He declared that there is currently no evidence of foul play in Bailey's death, despite the suspicious circumstances surrounding Bailey's initial disappearance. It is believed that the tourist walked and fell into a small water channel at night, leading to his death near the Rocktopus dive shop at Sayre Beach. No arrests have been made as the incident is considered an accident. Meanwhile, deeply saddened by the loss of her boyfriend, Bailey's partner turned to social media to express her heartfelt tribute to him. This was likely the hardest post she would ever have to write. Her best friend had become an angel. Having Bailey in her life for 10 years would never be long enough. She said she would spend the rest of her life missing Bailey, who would forever hold a place in her heart. She thanked Bailey for their fantastic and silly memories, stating how much she missed and loved her. Since the incident, many have speculated about the circumstances surrounding Bailey's death. While none offer a definitive explanation, it is mainly believed that cases like Bailey's are either concealed or inadequately investigated to safeguard powerful local interests on the island, which has a long history of violence and corruption. In the end, what happened to Bailey may forever remain unknown. Thanks to its ancient pyramids, which have stood for thousands of years and captivated visitors far and wide, Egypt ranks as one of the world's top tourist destinations. Yet for John Cooper and his wife Susan Cooper, their visit to this iconic land became their final journey, marked by a bizarre and tragic incident. In August 2018, the couple traveled to the country for a holiday with their family and friends. Based on Susan's recommendation, they decided to stay at the Steigenberger Aqua Magic Hotel in the Red Sea resort of Hurghada, as she claimed that she had enjoyed the best of services when she visited there earlier that year. But on the 8th day of their holiday, the room next to the Coopers, which had an adjoining locked door, underwent fumigation with pesticide, specifically lambda, due to a bedbug infestation. The fumigators had covered the adjacent door with masking tape, thinking it would be sufficient to prevent fumes from diffusing toward the Coopers' room. Meanwhile, when the fumigation occurred, the couple and their family spent time together at the hotel restaurant and bar, unaware of everything. Hours later, the couple returned to their room to retire for the night. They were accompanied by their granddaughter, Molly, on a single bed in their room. However, later in the night, Molly began to feel ill and could not sleep. She informed her grandparents, who thought it best that she spend the night with her mother, Miss Ormerod. John then took Molly to her mother, who stayed on the floor. This singular act appeared to have saved Molly's life, though this wouldn't become apparent until the following day, when John and Susan failed to show up for breakfast with the family. After their prolonged absence, Ormerod searched for her parents and was shocked by what she found. According to reports, as John opened the door of his hotel room, he displayed signs of severe discomfort, retching and contorting his face. He then slumped and sat in a corner of the room, visibly distressed. Meanwhile, Susan lay in bed emitting groans with vomit in her hair and scattered around the room. A strange, heavy smell also filled the room, later identified as fumes from the fumigation in the neighboring room earlier. After recovering from the shock of seeing her parents in this condition, Ormerod quickly summoned the doctors for help. Unfortunately, by this point it was already too late for John, despite CPR attempts to resuscitate him. Subsequently, Susan was promptly attended to and transported to a clinic within the hotel premises before being transferred to a hospital via ambulance. Despite exhaustive efforts to save her, Susan too succumbed to her condition, tragically passing away shortly after that. Following their untimely demise, the couple's remains were repatriated to their home country, encased in zinc-lined coffins. Initially, Egyptian authorities attributed their tragic deaths to natural causes, specifically citing an E. coli infection. However, 5 years later, during an inquest into their mysterious passing, a compelling revelation emerged. Several experts testified that the symptoms exhibited by the couple were consistent with those of individuals severely exposed to carbon monoxide. Consequently, it was determined that the pesticide-containing dichloromethane from the adjoining room was the primary factor in their deaths. They had inhaled the vapor, resulting in carbon monoxide poisoning, as the pesticide produces the poisonous gas when broken down by the body. This revelation finally gave the family of the couple the closure they had been looking for. Around the world, alcohol is beloved by many, yet when consumed excessively, what may have begun as a pleasurable activity can swiftly escalate into a tragic incident. Such seemed to be the case for 53-year-old Timothy Southern, who in May 2022 faced the dire consequences of overindulging in alcohol. At the time, Southern was enjoying a family vacation in Jamaica with his children, sister, and other relatives. They had chosen to stay at the Royal Decameron Club Caribbean, a popular resort located in the picturesque tourist town of St. Anne. One day during the holiday, Southern started his day with an early morning round of beer and brandy. The extent of his consumption remained unknown, leaving uncertainty about whether he had imbibed enough to become intoxicated. As the day progressed, Southern encountered a pair of Canadian female tourists embarking on a unique challenge: to complete the 21 cocktail challenge before midnight in celebration of one of their birthdays. Perhaps intrigued by the challenge and festive spirits of the tourists, Southern decided to join in on their revelry. He began gulping cocktail drinks one after the other in rapid succession. Upon getting to the 12th drink, Southern started to feel the effects of the alcohol deeply. He then decided that he had enough and would not be able to complete the challenge. Shortly after, he made his way back to his hotel room to sleep off the intoxication that had overtaken him. Upon reaching his room, Southern's initial plans to sleep off the effects of his drinking were quickly thwarted as he began to feel increasingly unwell. Almost immediately, he was overcome by a wave of sickness, prompting him to sound the alarm for help. Concerned family members, alerted by Southern's distress, rushed to his hotel room to assess the situation and provide assistance in any way they could. One of the relatives would later describe during an inquest the harrowing scene they encountered upon entering Southern's room. The relative claimed that they found him lying on his back, struggling to breathe, and emitting a distressing gurgling sound. Recognizing the situation's urgency, they quickly placed him in recovery, hoping to alleviate his discomfort. This maneuver prompted Southern to expel much of the alcohol he had consumed earlier in the day through vomiting. Southern's condition worsened, even after a nurse arrived at the scene. He had already started losing his temperature and was no longer responding to his name being called. His pulse could not also be found, indicating that Southern had lost consciousness. According to the relative, they initially hoped the nurse would take decisive action to assist Southern. However, to their astonishment and dismay, the nurse had yet to call an ambulance before turning up. She also didn't act as if Southern's case was an emergency, and only performed chest compression instead of giving Southern CPR when it appeared that he was no longer responding. Ultimately, Southern was pronounced dead after several attempts to stabilize him. A pathologist in Jamaica then ruled that the cause of death was acute gastroenteritis due to alcohol consumption. This meant that Southern suffered irritation and inflammation of his stomach and intestines after his binge drinking. In his case, the symptoms were so severe that his body was unable to cope with them. Southern's untimely death abroad presented his family with the daunting task of arranging for his transport back to his home country of Britain for burial. However, their efforts were quickly met with a significant obstacle when they discovered that Southern's holiday insurance, obtained through his bank, did not provide coverage for the unfortunate circumstance of his passing during the trip. Subsequently, they opened a GoFundMe on his behalf, raising almost $10,000. After all the required expenses were met, the rest of the funds were donated to the Mine charity. In March 2023, Dion Atherton, a father of two, traveled to Spain with his girlfriend Leanne Coleman for a long-anticipated vacation. The prior year, Atherton's plans for visiting the country had been thwarted by the unfortunate delay in the arrival of his passport. With a heart filled with excitement, Atherton arrived in the country with his partner and lodged in a hotel room with a balcony. Upon his arrival, he wasted no time reaching out to his family. He eagerly recounted to his father the incredible warmth of the country. However, tragedy struck before the day drew to a close. Atherton tragically plummeted from the balcony of their hotel room. He subsequently lost his life due to the injuries he sustained during his fall. An investigation was launched into his death, but no concrete reports have been released to the public, leaving so many unanswered questions as to what happened. In the wake of Atherton's untimely passing, an outpouring of love and tributes flooded in from friends and family alike. According to reports, all his friends thought he was an absolutely sound and amazing bloke. His demise weighed heavily on the heart of his father's wife, Sarah, who held a deep fondness for him. Furthermore, Atherton's partner Leanne and their children were profoundly wounded by his sudden departure, as he was typically known for spending every free moment he had with them. As the time for repatriating Atherton's body approached, his family, like many others who have faced a similar situation, discovered that Atherton had no insurance in place before making the trip to Spain. This meant there were no available funds to facilitate the repatriation process. They turned to crowdfunding to gather the necessary funds, launching a GoFundMe campaign. Initially, they set a modest target, but it was later increased to £10,000 due to how expensive repatriations could be. Nearly £6,000 was generously donated through over 120 contributions from friends, family, and compassionate strangers. These funds served their intended purpose, covering the costs of repatriating Atherton's remains. The rest were donated to a trust for his children,